Hello, welcome, Philip. You're live in the studio with us. I'm Seb, who you can't see.
You can see me now.
Is Ronan over here?
Hey, Philip.
Nice to see you.
You too.
But thank you so much for joining us. It's amazing to have you on here. Our first guest of our first ever episode. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here. Number one.
Yeah, we're thrilled. This is the European Tech Show. Is all about bringing on the best of European founders to talk about what they're building, the state of European tech, the ecosystem, and kind of to share your unique insights on the ecosystem and what you want to see changing. We're all familiar with Zilch, the business model, fastest growing European unicorn, amazing business model, 5 million users in 5 years. But what we'd like to get into first, because we only have 20 minutes, London Tech Week. Yep. You have been all over the shop, meeting all sorts of people, Jensen Huang, Eric Schmidt, Prime Minister, at Checkers, Downing Street garden parties. How's it been? What's the vibe?
Well, it's been quiet. It's been pretty relaxed. It is a crazy time of year, but I think this year is significantly higher energy than we've seen in a number of years before it. And there's a bunch of things driving that. I mean, the first is obviously you have a whole lot going on in the US. That is driving a lot of renewed interest in the UK ecosystem. Frankly, we're seeing a lot of investors looking at moving dollars out of the US. That's interesting. People are, for the first time in, since I can remember, talking about holding less dollars. That's interesting. And so, all of that, I think, has created a little bit of a renewed energy and almost given not just the UK, but Europe, probably a sense of the feeling that actually, hang on, this could be a moment in history where, other countries can really start to compete with today, what is the biggest, one of the biggest and largest countries in the world. The US, and obviously hugely innovative and the Valley and all of the good things. This could be that moment in time that allows, for instance, the UK, and we're excited about this from a fintech financial services point of view, the opportunity really to leapfrog some competition in the United States in building our own businesses. So I think everyone feels that energy. And as you say, we kicked off at Checkers on Sunday, which just was an amazing opportunity. And it was a surprise visit from Jensen, who turned up, and we were all in our blazers, and he turned up in his leather jacket. So it was fantastic to see him. Of course, people like Eric Schmidt, just brilliant to have people like that around you, and talking about a lot about AI, but not just AI. Of course, the different industries that AI is starting to completely transform. So the energy level really high. It's been a fantastic start to the week, but there's still quite a bit left of the week to go.
Yeah, and tomorrow I think you're on stage talking with the Thought Machine founder, with Poppy, with the LSE CEO. What are you going to be talking about there?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, Founders Forum. So Brent and Caroline obviously have done such a great job this week, and their main event is Founders Forum, and it's just such a brilliant event. It brings everyone together. This is the 20th anniversary of the event, and so the people who are going to be there are just unbelievable. And that panel specifically, we're going to be speaking about capital markets, what we're seeing in the UK. And obviously, Paul from Thought Machine, people are looking at them to see when are they going to be listing their business. A lot of people are asking the same question of us. And obviously, we have Julia on the panel from the LSE, who's got a lot to talk about too, in terms of what is the plan, what's going on, how are we going to bring more liquidity to the market, how do we make sure that companies, are born in the UK, grow in the UK, scale in the UK, stay in the UK. A lot of people have sort of questioned, well, do we really mind where these companies list? If they're still operating in the UK, they've still got customers here and they're serving people here, what's the problem? And our view is that there is a problem. If companies leave, there is an inertia that they drag with them to wherever it is that they go. And people don't actually appreciate the knock-on impact that can have. And so we actually think it's a really important topic. And so what we're trying to flesh out on that panel is sort of like, what's the state of the nation? Where is the market at here in the UK? And what can we expect from especially in fintech, we've got, about over 100 billion of private market cap companies in the UK, just in fintech, all sort of rattling towards what could be potential IPOs. And if we get this right, this could add $1 trillion to the FTSE 100 in the next 4 to 5 years. So obviously that's a huge opportunity for the UK. Government recognizes that. That's why Tech Week's so important. That's why there's so much energy. And you can imagine another $1 trillion turning up on the FTSE 100 in just 4 or so years, how much income tax that generates, how much VAT that generates with all the employees spending that money. And of course, what brilliant services and competition that drives into the market.
No, it'd be monumental. And Zilch is one of those companies that's constantly talked about as like one of the first ones or one of the big ones to IPO. And you're very UK, London, bullish centric. In your mind, what do you think needs to change to sort of open up that market to get companies like yourself IPOing in London?
Really, it's. We think there's a lot of this is around capital. If we think about, and actually at Checkers, we had an interesting discussion about talent as a starting point. And I think Jensen actually reflected this on stage to kick off Tech Week, which is that the UK is spoiled with talent, right? There's a huge amount of really intelligent, smart, brilliant people in the world. And naturally, if you said, well, if you could have a disproportionate amount of those people over the next few years, why wouldn't you take that opportunity? And thankfully, the UK still has 4 of the top 10, schools in the world. If you think about universities, so we're not struggling for talent in the UK. We've got great talent here. So it's a good starting point. There are a few things changing in terms of visa rules, etc., that we really need to think about because that could impact some of that talent. So, but we think we're already in a good spot with talent. Then you've got great startup environment here where you've got EIS, SEIS, lots of funding for startups. That's really interesting. But it's sort of when you get to scale that things start to become more difficult in the UK. And what I mean by that, if we just made this quite short and sweet, is you need access to capital. And if we look at a lot of our peers around us, so companies worth 1, 2, 3, 5 billion that are at that sort of level, hundreds of millions of revenue, etc. When you go out to do funding rounds, what you find typically, and this is a generalization, but typically those term sheets you're receiving are not coming from British funds. And specifically not from pension funds in the UK, that's for sure. And so what that does is it creates a weird dynamic because these companies start to raise more and more capital from, for instance, the US or other regions of the world. And naturally, a lot of these investors want to put someone on the board. And so the whole construct of the board starts to change. And so when these companies start to have a discussion around exit, whether that be sale or specifically listing, naturally, the board is more inclined to say, well, what about the US? Because a lot of the board at that point are likely from the US and a lot of the capital that's gone into the business is US capital. So it's just sort of like we shouldn't be surprised that that's the outcome. And so what we really need and what we're advocating strongly for is this pension reform. We need to see far less pension schemes in the UK. We need to consolidate the capital so that you can have real management teams who can actively manage these funds and invest in equities. If you go back 15 years, and that's not too long ago, you had 50% of British pension money was in British stocks. Today, it's less than 5%. And there's a whole lot of reasons for that, but we need to fix that. So we need to get this capital back into British stocks and making sure that then drives the liquidity of the market. Companies can raise from British funds. They can go on to list this good liquidity on the LSE, for instance, here in the UK, and then specifically think about tax at the back end of that for people who are selling down or exiting partially or fully. How do we have those people reinvest in the ecosystem?
Yeah. So we've got the talent, we're lacking the breakout capital, and I think that's true across the board. We hear a lot from fintech founders who, once they hit Series B, Series C, they struggle to raise the money from European funds, and they always have to look at US investors. I also want to talk about your card release. So you've taken an unusual approach in the fact that you've grown to 5 million users in 5 years, huge revenue, and now you've decided to launch the card. Like, what was the rationale about waiting until now to launch the card? And like, where do you want to take it, I guess?
I think there's probably two answers to that question. So the first is kind of CAC management, right? So what we didn't want to be doing is just printing a bunch of cards and shipping them to people, at a pretty high cost in the beginning of the company. Yeah, it's expensive. So for us, a large part of our model works really well for e-commerce and online. And so it was natural to say, let's rather start with a virtual card. That makes a lot more sense. Customers can use this online. They can also use it instantly. Plus, we don't have the cost of shipping. So when we were just starting out, a lot of this made sense. The other side of that decision was the sort of now incorrect thesis that we had, which was that, we only started in the market 5 years ago. And our view, was that if we looked at the market, my strong feeling was that in 5 to 7 years, there would be no more plastic really in the market because, the UK has always been on the forefront of payment innovation. If you go back to the Olympics, this is when tap and pay contactless really became pervasive through the UK. And Visa and MasterCard did a great job of getting people comfortable with this on the tube, areas where people were used to tapping and paying, and then bringing that obviously more to retail and mass market. And so the UK has really been at the forefront of digital wallet, Apple Pay, Google Pay, tap and pay adoption. And so, the thesis was if we looked out 7 or so years, you'd probably have much less plastic. So why are we bothering issuing old technology today in this business? It's okay. The world will catch up. And I think we were just wrong, right? So what we see today is people still like the trust of that physical instrument in their wallet, even if they're not pulling it out. It creates great brand awareness, which of course is quite useful. But there are a lot of use cases still that you have to use the card. You check into a hotel, they want to take the payment. You're renting the car, they want to insert the card and so on. And so we're just trying to expand wallet share of our customers, frankly, here and make sure we can help them with each and every use case they have, not just the ones we currently serve. And so we've sort of, I think it was two things. One, we were right on, which was cost management on CAC to start. And then the thesis of no plastic, we were just wrong. And, we can admit that. And so we looked at this and said, we probably think if we look another 7 years out from now, there may be far less plastic. But how many use cases do we miss for customers in that period? And we just think the opportunity is too large. So we're going and we're issuing this, of course, very differently to what you found in a traditional physical card, right? This is just a token. It identifies who you are. And you control how you want to pay through our app. Pay now, pay later, change your mind, snooze, etc. It's all through the app, but the token at least allows you to go perhaps where today you couldn't.
Yeah, amazing. No, and I think, Zilch is a really unique company in the sense that you've got your consumer flywheel through your app, now through your card. You manage all those B2B relationships where you get the ad spend and I think it's an amazing business model for successfully turning both flywheels, the consumer, taking high intent consumers and turning them into real sales for your B2B partners, I think is amazing. What are you expecting the card to do next? Are you expecting to see a high uptake of your 5 million users use it? Are you going to be rolling it out to everybody? Is it something that you're making immediately available? What's the sort of the rollout plan or strategy with it?
Yeah, so the first thing to point out, which is really interesting, is if we look at our utilization data, we can see that customers today who use our product in store are likely to spend with us, or the utilization is 3 times what the utilization is for a customer who just uses us online. And that probably doesn't sound hugely surprising, I wouldn't think, to most people, but of course, that's really interesting. That's a massive opportunity for us. So if we can go and get our product in the hands of our customer, for all of these other use cases, particularly in store or offline, we think we can drive 2 to 3 times the utilization for those customers. And, and this doesn't have any CAC cost to it. There's no growth cost to it besides the technology. So, what a fantastic way for us to be able to grow. And if we think about the business today, we think that means we could probably grow the business by 50 to 60% just with the current base. So massive opportunity ahead of us. So that's like the starting baseline, starting point. And that's without building anything new. It's bringing all of the technology we currently have just to this form factor. The second thing I would say is then on the roadmap for us, we really do think about use cases and how we can add value to those use cases. So, for instance, can we add value to car rental in some form? And obviously, we're a credit business by nature as well. And so I'll give you a good example. And we're looking at things like this, but you go to Greece, you need to rent the car, they take the down payment. You now don't have that cash to spend on the holiday because it's tied up in the down payment for the car. And then you have to wait 2 weeks once you return the vehicle to get the money back. So we could actually create a product that allows you to use Zilch for this, and we could release that cash to you in the meantime so you can enjoy the holiday with that money, and then you can get the money refunded later. These are the types of things we look at to say, how do we uniquely help you in this use case using the technology we have, which is that we know we can make ad revenue from the car rental company. We know we could therefore afford to rent you the money for free over the period of your holiday, and you could pay it back when you get home. Okay, that makes sense. That is not just a typical use case. And, here's a normal credit card use case for car rental. It's unique. That will land well with customers. Let's roll that out. So that's the way we think about product development. And then just skipping forward very quickly, why this form factor matters is that we want to be wherever you are. And we think that is going to be more and more important when you think about agentic commerce, the way the world is moving. We've had numerous conversations with the Visa team on their new agentic products, companies like Perplexity or ChatGPT, about where the world is going when you think about payment. And so, for us, really, we want to make sure that we are that payment product that you're using across any form factor. Whether you're telling an agent to shop on your behalf, it'll be using Zilch to make that purchase for you. And so we just need to be wherever you are.
Yeah, amazing. And you've grown exponentially in the last 5 years, and it feels like this is just like another untapped growth lever to really take to the next level. I'm conscious that we've got like 2 minutes left. Final question. Thank you so much for joining us. What's your top priority for the end of 2025, 2026? What's the one thing that you're looking at or you're focusing on?
I actually just mentioned it there. So agentic commerce is the big focus for us. So we just thinking, and again, we've been wrong with a few things in the past when we try and look forward 10 years and we say, and in this world, by the way, you can't look 10, you need to look 5 years forward and say, how do we think the world looks in 5 years from now? And then the real question to the team is, how does Zilch participate meaningfully in that world? So there's a lot of business as usual, really innovative, interesting stuff on our roadmap, which is build this, launch those new use cases. This is great. But the broader question to our leadership team is, in 5 years from now, this is how we think the world looks. We think payments are invisible and frictionless. We don't think user interfaces exist like they do today. We don't know if you would need those. Why do we all need, with agentic type AI and commerce, why do you need a screen to tap some buttons to order a car to pick you up? Why would you need that? I mean, the only reason you needed the UI is because you didn't have something smart enough to just do it for you. So if we don't have that layer, that UI layer generally, how does Zilch exist in that world? And then let's work backwards from there and make sure that we're building towards that. So agentic commerce for us is certainly what we're focused on.
Amazing. That sounds really cool. But look, thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to have you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Philip.
Thanks for having me. Nice to see you both.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Likewise.
Ciao.